Welcome, friends. You've tuned into Reflections, a program sponsored by Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where together we do God's work with human hands. I'm Pastor Karen Winkel. I serve United Church of Paducah here in Paducah, and my co-host, Gregory Weldrup, is not with us today, not in body, but he's always here in spirit. So welcome. And today we have Kristin Gregory with us. Although you won't be watching this perhaps right after the celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday, it is, as we tape, shortly after that. And so today we're talking with Kristin Gregory about where we are with the dream that Dr. King so powerfully spoke and gave us this dream, which is not just his dream. This is a program of faith, so we understand it to be God's dream for God's children. But a conversation today about where we are with the dream. Is that dream alive? Have we moved forward, backwards, sideways? Where are we with that dream? And so, Kristin, I'd like to welcome you this morning and thank you for coming and spending some time with us. Tell me just a little bit about yourself and how it is that you find yourself in Paducah, because I don't think you're a Paducah native.
Sure. Thank you all for having me. I found myself in Paducah. I arrived here in January of 2005, an intern for the city, actually in the city manager's office. I was working on a Master of Public Administration and needed an internship, did that there at the city. At the end of the internship, of course, it's time to work, and was looking for a job, different places across the country, but talked to the city about a new position there. And so currently I work there as Public Information Officer. I've been here in Paducah ever since. So.
And what does a Public Information Officer do for folks that don't know?
Sure. A Public Information Officer does a lot of other duties as assigned, but some of the major things, try to update content on the website, write press releases, work with the media, try to inform people of different policy decisions that have been made, sometimes do research for some of the commissioners, provide assistance to the department heads on things we need to get out as far as public meetings and other action that the commission is considering taking. So it varies. It varies.
So
Every day is
you're
different.
a bridge in a lot of ways of communicating and helping interpret, I'm thinking, for the community, various things that are happening at the various governmental levels. Yeah.
Yes. We also work with lots of other associated agencies, so we do some stuff with them, with the Visitors Bureau and with GP Economic Development and with Main Street. And so also sometimes I serve as a liaison with some of those agencies back to the city.
And you've brought with you a book with that title that is our focus today, I Have a Dream. That came into your hands for some reason or other. Were you taking a class, or is this a personal interest that you have in Dr. King?
This is a personal interest more than anything else. I was an English major, and some of our books, of course, you get different writings and speeches, and they tell you about the literary canon and what's important. And it's interesting that Dr. King, Reverend King, a lot of his speeches and sermons were one and the same. And this is something that just I've studied. Of course, everyone's heard the I Have a Dream speech, but actually a woman at my church that I grew up in gave me this book of speeches and was just showing me different sides of Dr. King and what all of the went into the dream, and kind of carried him through that point, and lots of the nuggets of wisdom that you can find in his writings and in his sermons. And so it's something that I've read, different speeches and sermons and letters at different points, but definitely around this time of year I usually try to pull it back out and to kind of take an introspective look at myself a little bit and see how I line up on some of these things.
Very interesting, because I think probably for many people, I don't know that they would do that reflection about where that they are participating in that dream. I think probably for many people, that dream is still somehow outside them, something that they're observing. Would that be your sense of the American populace?
It seems that way, and I think many times we say Martin Luther King's dream, and this was his dream, but I think more than anything, it probably would matter to him more that we adopt it so that it's our dream. And I think only until it's a part of each of us and we take it on an individual level does it have any power and meaning. And I mean, it's kind of like our faith. Sure, we have corporate and collective, worship and faith experiences, but it's only when we have our one-on-one time with God and time to make it more personal that it actually becomes more meaningful for us. And I think this is the same way. Some of the things that Dr. King asks for and wishes for and hopes for and work towards show that it's not a type of thing that just happens by policy or that happens by us talking about it, but it happens with each person, each family, how we interact with others and the deliberate strides that we take to try to include one another and challenge some of the things that are going on, some of the discrimination, some of the inequalities, the type of freedom that he seemed to speak about. Really, he talks a lot about how intertwined our destinies are, and I think it's understanding that and trying to take that on a level and saying, well, what do I do? And I think lots of times we say, well, I don't do that or I don't do this, instead of saying, well, there are probably times where I could do this instead of what I normally do, to take more deliberate steps for noticing some of these things. And I just think, I know it's really humbling for me and sobering around this time of year to say, where are we? And to say, well, what has been my role in that? Each of us personally play a role in it. And I think sometimes we probably don't consider quite as much the me factor. And I think that's what makes a difference. That's how change is made person by person.
Exactly. And that can be exciting and overwhelming at the same time.
Yes.
I mean, because to hear that dream does stir something in the soul, I think, no matter what your experience, no matter your optimism or your cynicism, I don't think you can hear that and not have something stir. But then what happens next?
Right.
What happens next is a matter of personal choice.
Right.
So much. Where do you think we are with this dream? Because what you're describing, that personal connection, isn't something that I've observed, and it would seem to me that that's a critical part of the dream. Moving from dream to really lived reality would be for people to find themselves in that dream.
Sure. Well, I think we tend to look at it kind of narrowly, and that might be the first thing people think of is race, because you do hear him say that he wants to see black children and white children, and that common theme of looking at people for the content of their character and not the color of their skin. But I think there's more to it than just race, and I do think we still have racial inequalities, but I think we have to challenge ourselves in looking farther into what he really hoped for us to have, and that's for people to live together in harmony, and that's for people to have opportunity, to the pursuit of happiness, and to be able to exercise our inalienable rights and all of the things that are at the core and at the very fiber of what we believe as Americans. And I think that there are other challenges that we have in addition to race that I think would be a part of the dream. Like now I know that W.B. Du Bois said that a challenge and the problem of the 20th century would be the color line. And Dr. King talked a lot about race. And I think now we're also dealing with socioeconomic status and how that is used to divide and segregate people today. How we seem to be we care more about individualism than collective and caring about one another. How spirituality doesn't seem as relevant. How we don't allow God to transform our lives, and how that doesn't help us to move in the avenues that we should. And I think all of those things are things that hinder our ability to actually exercise the dream to its fullest extent. And it's not just race. And in some of those areas, I think we probably have a good ways to go. And I think when I was growing up, my mother always, told us, too much is given, much is required. And I think if we had to think about the dream a little bit, I think we've been given quite a bit, and I'm not sure that we've probably done all that we can with what we've been given. And we have made strides as far as, the dream is concerned, but in other areas it seems like we're regressing or taking steps back. Before we were segregated by race, it seemed more in the times when, the speech was written, whereas now we have all these other different ways that we find ourselves separating ourselves from one another. And I mentioned some of them. Some of it, you live in a certain area. We do it by where you live, and that's by what you can afford, and that's who you go to school with. And so we tend to be in more homogenous groups and settings, and some of those things keep us from fully carrying out, I think, what was behind the dream.
Seems to me, as you're speaking, that human beings do gravitate. If they have a chance, they'll gravitate toward the folks that they experience as most like them. And so, because I'm remembering when I was in elementary school, my school district was dealing with the segregation in the city in which I was living, and we were, because it was a city living in different neighborhoods. I was shocked as a child, because I was invited to participate in a program that was connecting kids from these very different schools. I was shocked at the response of my classmates, who were very frightened on my behalf. And what I came to realize over the course of my growing up is that not everybody knows how to relate to someone who's different than they are, which I didn't understand that, because there was something in me that wanted to connect to the real person in front of me, and the other things, they came from a different neighborhood, or they lived in a different town, or whatever it was that made us different. Their dad wasn't there in their home, or whatever made them different was less important to me than who they were inside. But as I grew, I discovered that a lot of people don't have the ability to move into the personhood of someone who outwardly presents as different, or who socially presents as different. What do we, because to realize the dream means that we develop some skills to do that. How does that happen? Do you have an idea about that?
Well, it's a challenge. I think we're all prone to travel the path of least amount of resistance. And like anything else that's somewhat difficult for us, I think, once again, it's something that is deliberate, and it takes us to try to open our minds. And unfortunately, the kind of underlying thing that I think we don't always talk about so much is what makes it hard for us is really fear. I think fear is kind of the underlying factor that sometimes prevents us from being able to connect with someone else, because maybe if we have different values, or if we have different customs and cultures, we somehow feel that someone else that does it another way can somehow threaten what we're comfortable with, what we're accustomed to, what we like. And we're afraid that somehow that interaction can somehow take away something for us, or maybe challenge our way of being or thinking that we're pretty proud of, or comfortable to have. And when we think about lots of things that God tells us, that we haven't been given the spirit of fear, but of love and sound mind, and we have to try to find the courage to not be afraid, but to go ahead and take some of those steps and see what it's like. And we're afraid sometimes what other people think. We're afraid of how we'll be received, because sometimes we don't know how to connect, and then we're afraid to offend, and then and from then the whole spiral and circle of fear gets so out of control that many times we don't end up taking some of those steps.
Well, and as you're speaking too, I'm thinking fear certainly is a huge, huge force that keeps us from moving into, what in my mind is, the promised land or the kingdom of God. That fear keeps us on the periphery and unable to step forward. But also, one of the things that that I've noticed is even for those who have a desire to connect, there's a difficulty in navigating ambiguity. Because when there's difference, we don't know how to make sense of it. So even if I have a desire to connect with somebody who in some way is different from me, I don't always understand what it is that's happening in that conversation or in that connection. And so I withdraw because the tension around that is so high. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps us from moving forward, is we don't know how to make sense of our experience sometimes when there is difference involved.
And sometimes we focus so much on the difference that we don't see some of the commonalities, or we don't think that there are some things that we share in common. But basically, when you talk to most people about what they want or what they care about, or what's close to their hearts, it's things that we all kind of care about. You have a mother, I have a mother. We might not all connect with them in the same way, but most of us have some kind of longing or desire to have a close relationship with our parents or our families, or we have a certain dream or something that we feel has been placed inside of us to pursue in life, be it a job or, a hobby. Or, most of those things most people have, and we can all, they may not be the same, but, by the mere fact that we're people, all made and created by God, we all kind of have, some of those things. And I think sometimes because we are a little bit intimidated, and we are, sometimes we're so concerned about how to approach it and how to do it right, that we forget, amidst all the difference, there are things that we share. And sometimes probably starting with the things that we share can make it a little bit easier to also get to some of the other things that are a little bit more challenging.
So what would be your dream about the dream? Because you're a young woman, you're obviously articulate and capable, and you look at, I'm sure you're looking at the life you've been given to live. You feel a personal responsibility to carry that dream. I think I would think that you would have a dream about that dream and your place in it in the years to come.
Sure. Yes, I guess one of the biggest things is we only really have control over ourselves, and the main thing is for me to be able to continue challenging myself and saying, well, if this is what I feel, if this is what I believe, then what do my actions show? What do I do? Am I only around the people that I know I share things with? When I'm around other people, do I kind of turn up my nose? Am I a snob when I'm around certain people that might not share some of the same things that I do? Or am I willing to try to be open and try to understand? Or even when I don't understand, can I still appreciate that? And do I let those things be dividers? And sometimes I might not. Like, I think we all do have different stereotypes and about, if we see a certain person, but I think it's how we act on them that becomes the problem or the answer. And I think for me, it's constant, to keep allowing myself to be, convicted and challenged on what I do, to see where I fall into that. I know many times observing other things, helps me remind me of that. I think, well, how could they do that, or that's not right? And then once I stop for a minute, it's like, I hear God telling me, well, what about this? Or, I'm shown another circumstance where I probably could have done better or more than what I've done. And I think I definitely would have a dream that I can take what I've learned and what I'm given and do the best that I can with it and share it, and not so much in necessarily talking about it, but in what I do and how I live. And I think that's in my faith as well as, you know, with the dream. And I think that's our biggest challenge, is to kind of give legs to our faith and what we really believe in.
Well, I'm so impressed with this very integrated vision that you have, because I think so often, because I really am hearing how you view the small, the small interaction, the the momentary opportunity as integral to the realization of the dream, as opposed to something that maybe is more programmatic or outside us. That it is really almost like a breath that you take. You know, here's my chance to live this dream, this moment that I've been given. And it's something that gets folded into a life, not that you go and work on it and then come back to the life that you're living. And I think that's quite remarkable and less common, perhaps. Because most of us, I think, do kind of think in terms of agenda, whatever, or accomplishing something and going and striving for something that lives outside us somehow, that it's over there that we're working on it rather than right here, right now, and trusting that whatever that gesture is adds in some meaningful way to the realization of that.
Well, that's just been my experience. I think I've been in situations where I felt like I was in the numerical minority, and I've been in different situations where I've had people that have challenged me and have told me, well, Kristen, that's really not the way that is, and that's just because that's where you're sitting. And it's only been on some of my one-on-one encounters with different people that I've really been able to kind of see myself and say, here's what I'm guilty of, and here's how that can make a difference. And I think it's only in our individual relationships and only in those experiences that we're able to grow. It's nice to go to programs. When I was in college, we did a lot of programming on Black History Month, or a program, and you get an experience of a culture. But it's only when you actually interact and actually deal in the similarities, the day-to-day of life things, that you're better able to grasp some of those things. It's been, for me, I think one of the biggest wake-up calls for me was interacting with some of my international friends, people that were not from the United States, that were, challenging me on saying, just how the abundance of things that we have and the difference in understanding things. And I've really had to sit back and say, wow, I'm only looking from one frame of mind, and it's challenging. It's kind of hard, to hear it, but it's good to hear it, and it's nice to get into a comfort zone with people that are different from you, that are really willing to tell you where you could stand to grow.
Yeah, but that can only be offered, in a relationship where there's trust and love, and because that's what enables us to change, I think, rather than feeling judged or on someone else's timeline or whatever. Well, it's very clear to me that you experience yourself as a participant in this dream, and that this dream is really, in a sense, being lived through you, and it's clear to me that this is connected in a deep way to your faith. And I know that you brought with you a book to share with our viewers. Speak to that just a little bit, if you would. Because one of the things that we've been doing on this program is encouraging people to connect with a resource in book form as a way of deepening faith or challenging faith. So share the book that you've brought.
Okay. This book, it's a study as well as a book. There's a book to it, and this is kind of the study guide. But it's Experiencing God, and it's by Henry T. Blackaby and Claude V. King. Outstanding book, outstanding study. My mother teaches Sunday school, and she teaches public school, and she's just an all-around teacher. And I remember growing up, and she taught this to a women's Bible study, and at that point I thought, well, what's that? It's kind of laying around, and I never picked it up. But when I went to college, my church offered it as a class, and it's definitely been one of the single most important books as far as spiritual growth for me. It goes, there are 7 major steps or kind of tenets to the book on what it talks about, and the main thing it is talking about really how to experience God, how to have a personal relationship with God. And it talks about how God is always working, and it talks about how God wants a love relationship with all of us, and God wants us to work with him. Some of the major aspects though that it speaks to is how God speaks, you know, through the Holy Spirit, through the Bible, through our experiences, through other people, how he reveals himself to us, how we have a crisis of belief, and how we have to make adjustments in our life to try to align our lives to what God wants us to do versus our own will, and kind of understanding our struggle of wills, and knowing that, you know, God has a plan for all of us and what he wants to accomplish, you know, through us as we obey him and get to know him. And this book sets itself up where every day you have a lesson, and you get just enough, you know, bite off just enough that you can chew and try to mull it over, and then you can go to the next day and you get a little bit more. But it's excellent, and even sometimes I go back through it when I need to be reminded again. But it's just been an awesome tool. I would recommend it for anybody. It's not heavy or over the top. It's right there with you, and it's a way to kind of do on your own. So
yeah, well, I just really want to thank you, because that's it's a powerful message that you've brought. Sure. That that it's by participating with God. I really sense how God uses you, but you know, there's the phrase, you know, we've got to walk our talk. I'm remembering also, I believe it was Gandhi who said we must be the change that we wish to see in the world, and I'm really sensing how the dream that Dr. King had, that he shared, is taken root in you, and you own that dream, and that dream owns you, and you are, in ways big and small, living into that dream. And you certainly have inspired me. I thank you for sharing with us this witness and the challenge that goes with it. So I want to thank you, our viewers, for being with us today, and thank you, Kristen, for sharing. Do join us again next time. Wherever you are, however you can, participate with us in doing God's work with human hands. Thank you, and goodbye.